This was the last Lamborghini flagship you could explain in one breath. A naturally aspirated V12, no turbochargers, no hybrid system, a carbon fiber passenger cell, and doors that opened toward the sky. But the Aventador was not a museum piece built to protect Lamborghini's past. It launched with an entirely new engine, a racing-style suspension layout, and a gearbox that could shift in 50 milliseconds. That same gearbox could also shake its occupants through town. For 11 years, Lamborghini kept making the Aventador faster, sharper, and more extreme, until it became something more important than another poster car. It became the final chapter of an entire kind of supercar. When the Aventador arrived in 2011, it replaced the Murcielago. That sounds like a normal model change. It was not. Lamborghini needed a new technical foundation for its V12 flagship, and almost every important part of the formula changed. At the center was the L539 engine, a new 6.5-liter, 60-degree naturally aspirated V12. In launch specification, it produced 700 CV at 8,250 RPM and 690 Newton-meters of torque. Lamborghini said the engine weighed 235 kilograms. The complete car had a quoted dry weight of 1,575 kilograms, could reach 100 kilometers per hour in 2.9 seconds, and had a claimed top speed of 350. Those numbers were spectacular in 2011, but the way Lamborghini achieved them is the more interesting story. The Aventador was built around a carbon fiber monocoque produced in Sant'Agata Bolognese. The passenger cell weighed only 147.5 kilograms. With its aluminum front and rear frames attached, the body structure weighed 229.5 kilograms. Lamborghini quoted torsional stiffness of 35,000 Newton-meters per degree. That stiffness matters because a suspension cannot control the wheels precisely if the structure between them is flexing. It also gave the Aventador a rigid safety cell while keeping mass concentrated low and close to the center of the car. Instead of mounting conventional spring and damper units directly at each wheel, Lamborghini used a pushrod layout. The wheel moved a rod that transferred load to horizontally mounted suspension components inside the body. It was a solution associated with racing cars, chosen for packaging, response, and control. On a road-going V12 Lamborghini, it was also a declaration of intent. This car was designed to look outrageous. Underneath, it was serious. Then came the transmission. Most modern performance cars use a dual-clutch gearbox because it can prepare the next ratio before the driver asks for it. Lamborghini chose something stranger, a 7-speed single-clutch transmission called ISR, or independent shifting rod. The mechanism used separate shifting rods so one could disengage a gear while another engaged the next. In its fastest setting, Lamborghini claimed a shift time of 50 milliseconds. It was compact, light compared with a contemporary dual-clutch unit, and spectacular at full attack. It was not always elegant. Contemporary road tests repeatedly described the ISR as abrupt or clunky at low speed. In the most aggressive mode, the interruption in power could feel like a physical event. The Aventador would briefly release the driveline, select the next gear, and return the full force of the V12. Technically, it was fast. Subjectively, it could feel violent. That contradiction became part of the car's identity. The Aventador did not hide the machinery. It made every upshift another piece of theater. The design made the same promise before the engine even started. Lamborghini's own history describes an aeronautical influence. The Reventon had already explored the idea of a road-going fighter jet, and the Sesto Elemento had shown how sharp geometry and carbon construction could become a visual language. The Aventador turned those experiments into a production flagship. The body was drawn from wedges, hexagons, deep air channels, and the Y-shaped light signature that became a modern Lamborghini theme. Cooling openings were not hidden. They were made into the face of the car, and the scissor doors were essential. They connected the Aventador directly to the Countach, Diablo, and Murcielago lineage. A normal hinge would have opened the cabin. The vertical door opened the show. Even the name carried the mythology. Aventador was a fighting bull recognized for courage in Zaragoza in 1993. It was carefully engineered branding, but it worked because the car looked capable of living up to it. The original LP700-4 was only the beginning. The LP750-4 Superveloce reduced weight, added power, and sharpened the aerodynamics. It made the Aventador louder visually and more focused dynamically. Then the Aventador S arrived with 740 CV and four-wheel steering. At low speed, the rear wheels could turn opposite the fronts to make the car feel more agile. At higher speed, they could turn in the same direction to improve stability. The S kept the official 2.9-second run to 100 km per hour and 350 km per hour top speed, but it changed the way the long, wide chassis responded. And then Lamborghini built the SVJ. The Aventador SVJ produced 770 CV and used the second generation of Lamborghini's active aerodynamic system, ALA. Small electronically controlled flaps redirected airflow through the body. The system could close for maximum downforce, open to reduce drag, and even alter the aerodynamic load from one side of the car to the other during a corner. Lamborghini said the actuators reacted in less than half a second. The goal was not a single fixed compromise. The car could change its aerodynamic behavior while it was moving. In 2018, an Aventador SVJ recorded 6 minutes, 44.97 seconds around the 20.6-kilometer Nurburgring Nordschleife configuration. That record mattered because it challenged the easy criticism that the Aventador was merely loud, wide, and theatrical. The SVJ was still all of those things, but it was also devastatingly effective. Production was limited to 900 SVJs. The SVJ 63 made the reference even more explicit. 63 cars, honoring Lamborghini's founding year of 1963. During the Aventador's life, the supercar world changed. Turbocharging became normal. Dual-clutch gearboxes became smoother and faster. Electric motors began filling torque gaps and helping cars reach numbers that once belonged to science fiction. The Aventador evolved, but its central ritual remained intact. Press the starter beneath the red cover. Wake a large naturally aspirated V12. Pull a paddle. Feel a single clutch brake and reconnect the driveline. Watch the horizon disappear beneath a windscreen shaped like a visor. By the end, some of that hardware looked old-fashioned on paper. That is exactly why it became precious. The rough edge was not always better. It was memorable. Lamborghini named the last series Ultimae. Its V12 produced 780 CV, more than the SVJ, while the body avoided the SVJ's largest aerodynamic additions. It was designed as a final combination of performance and grand touring shape. Official figures included 0 to 100 km per hour in 2.8 seconds and a 355 km per hour top speed. Production was limited to 350 coupes and 250 roadsters. When the final Aventador left Sant'Agata in 2022, Lamborghini called it the end of an era. The company also described the Aventador as its biggest V12 success, with more sales than every previous Lamborghini V12 model combined. That success is important. The Aventador was not kept alive as a tiny nostalgic experiment. It carried Lamborghini's flagship identity for more than a decade. The Aventador's successor still has a naturally aspirated V12, but it belongs to a hybrid system. That is the future Lamborghini chose because performance targets, emissions rules, and technology all moved forward. The Aventador therefore sits at a precise point in history. It was modern enough to use a carbon monocoque, active aerodynamics, four-wheel steering, and software-controlled driving modes, but its central experience was still mechanical and unassisted. 12 cylinders, atmospheric induction, one clutch, and all-wheel drive trying to turn combustion into motion. Some rivals were smoother, some shifted better, some were easier to place on a road. The Aventador was not built to disappear beneath the driver. It was built to make an entrance, make a noise, and make the machinery impossible to ignore. The Lamborghini Aventador became legendary because it turned old-world supercar drama into a genuinely new engineering platform. The carbon structure was advanced. The V12 was new. The suspension was exotic. The aerodynamics eventually became active. And the gearbox remained gloriously controversial from beginning to end. That imperfection matters. The Aventador was not the last fast Lamborghini, and it was not the last Lamborghini with 12 cylinders. It was the last non-hybrid V12 Lamborghini flagship whose entire character came from combustion, carbon, and courage. That is why it will never happen again. Subscribe to Speed TV Tui1 for researched car stories, engine legends, and buyer warnings without fake ownership claims.